Hello, Curran here. I was just working on this blog post, VizHub 1.0, and I figured I'd make a video to go along with it and introduce myself and sort of go through everything that's in here. First of all, my name's Curran. I turned 32 today, October 10th. I live in India with my wife and daughter. We've lived in India for about 3 years now. And I make my living as a remote data visualization consultant, freelancer, software developer type person. And recently I got this professor job with Worcester Polytechnic Institute teaching their online data visualization class. So let me go through this post and sort of dive into the details here. VizHub has been put through its paces as the content creation and assignment submission tool for Data Visualization Course 2018, and let me show you what's here. This page here is an index to all the public content for the data visualization course I taught through WPI. When I asked the folks at WPI, could I make the content public for the course? Much to my surprise at the time, they said, sure, that's fine, you own the content. What the students are paying for is the exclusive online learning community and the direct feedback from you, and of course the university credits. So I decided to make all the content public and all the implementation material open source. So it's a full 10-week course at the graduate level on data visualization using D3 as our tool. If you click through on one of these thumbnails here, you land inside VizHub, which is this platform that I use to actually write the code while I record these YouTube videos, which are embedded in these pages. And this is what I deliver to the students each week, lectures in this platform. So the students will then fork these works here, modify the code, and then they get a URL under their account for their work, and then they submit that as their homework assignment. For example, one of the assignments was to take this interaction of interactive filtering with the color legend and apply it to a different visualization like a scatter plot. Let me backtrack a little bit and say, what is VizHub anyway, and why was this created? When I first started teaching web development many years ago, I would start by, okay, everybody, set up your development environment on your machine. And then, write this code. And then it was so frustrating because it took weeks and weeks for the students to learn everything that's required. And in modern times, if I were to do that, it would be like, hey, you can go ahead and install Node.js, install, all these packages. Oh, here's package.json. It does this. And then to use ES6 modules, which is the latest version of JavaScript, it's not ES5. You need to use this thing called Babel and Webpack or Rollup. It's up to you which one you use. And then you need to learn Git if you want to share your work. And then you have to learn all the Git commands and sign up for a GitHub account, set up your SSH keys, all this BS before you write one line of code. And I was frustrated by this. The students were frustrated by this. So I think around 2010, I started using JSBin, this online editor for code. JSBin is fantastic. It provides a browser-based editor for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you can see your output here, and it even has a fake console. So this is pretty great. I use this to teach a couple courses. My main frustration with JSBin is that the focus of the tool is not on presenting the work to others, and that's where blocks.org has its strong suit. With blocks.org, you get this really nice profile page with your name, avatar, links to all of your blocks. And if you click through to one of these, you get this really nice presentation of your work where the work itself is front and center, has a title, you can say who made it, and there's also an opportunity to add a complete description. So it's a really nice platform for publishing your works, sharing them, and then the code is secondary. It's there to inspect and study if you want to, but it's not front and center like it is with JSBin. I was so excited when Block Builder came out in 2015. Shout out to Ian Johnson, who made Block Builder back in the day, and also Micah Stubbs, who's working on it still. Block Builder really rocked my world at the time because it gave you this really nice editor where when you click Save, it actually saves to your blocks.org profile. Block Builder is really great, but I remember it was about the time that I was working on this example where I was experimenting with components and also Redux with D3. My frustration is that the code just got too big. And even though things are logically grouped in modules, Block Builder doesn't support ES6 modules. So it's either you write it all in one big file, like I did here, it got to be like 370 lines long, or you could add multiple JavaScript files and then use multiple script tags at the top of the file like you had to do back in the day. But I was feeling frustrated because nowadays we have ES6 modules, the super duper sweet module system. And then I started thinking, what if you could use ES6 modules in a browser developer environment? It turns out that Code Sandbox actually does have this feature. Code Sandbox is a full-fledged browser-based IDE where you can have multiple files and even directories. And I think it runs Webpack internally or something, so you can have a package.json, add dependencies from npm, and their vanilla template uses this project called Parcel, which is sort of a new, untested thing, so I'm not sure why. Like, it doesn't feel totally vanilla to me when I use it. But anyway, I mean, Code Sandbox is great and all, for what it is, but it has the same issue as JSBin does for me, which is that the main focus is the code, not the output from the code. And also, it feels kind of like a desktop development environment because you have to deal with package.json. You have to understand Parcel in this example, or whatever the underlying technologies are. It's not just, simple standards. It's you have to understand the particular technology that's being used. So in that way, it's kind of like, setting up a desktop environment. What I really was looking for is some sort of combination of the ES6 features of Code Sandbox, but also the very beautiful presentational aspect and design of blocks.org. Observable was another contender for the platform that I would use for teaching my data visualization class. Observable has a lot of great aspects to it. Here's an example of a D3 stacked bar chart by Mike Bostock. See, you can edit the code right here in the browser, and folks can fork these things. So here's the fork button. And you do get a nice profile page. The reason I chose not to use Observable for teaching my data visualization class is because it's not standard JavaScript. I mean, look at this. Chart equals, that's not JavaScript. It's not standard JavaScript syntax. It's observable JavaScript syntax. And while the ideas of the automated reactivity and everything is super cool, and it's a really interesting research space, I want to teach students using standard technologies that they could use in the workplace. I think it's telling that the most viewed entry in the Observable forum is this one about exporting the final code. It's a simple question. Let's say I finish my awesome notebook with a nice viz. As a result, is there a way to save a .js file with the code? And it's marked as solved because you can export this embeddable observable notebook. But as I read through this entire thread, I came to the conclusion that it's not actually solved because the thing that you get when you export something out of Observable is another very observable specific thing with your code, but it's actually compiled into some strings in a JavaScript object in this bundle somewhere. So it's not designed for continued authorship outside of Observable. And when I saw this and read this thread, I'm like, no, I can't use Observable for teaching my class because it's basically a vendor lock-in situation. And I don't want that for my students. I want to teach them today's standards. Given all that, and also given the fact that I've had many ideas over the years about how blocks.org itself could be improved, like, for example, adding view count or comments section, or having data sets separate from visualizations, or having things that are forked from one another link to one another. That would be cool. So given the fact that none of these existing systems sort of satisfied my desires as a professor teaching an online course, and I've had all these ideas that I've been sort of itching to implement, I decided to go ahead and create a brand new platform and online tool for developing data visualizations in the browser for use with my students with this WPI course. The core idea, which is like phase 1, which is done now, is to make it simple and easy to develop visualizations in the browser using standard technologies like ES6 modules. In the future, I want to build out the platform over the years to be more focused on publishing, like having a blocks.org like layout, and also collaboration, more like Google Docs for data visualizations. So that's how VizHub was born. Now that it's been used for some time by the students, and it's been pretty successful, I'm marking it as 1.0. And so I'm going to go through some of the 1.0 features. Visualization export is now working. If you're in VizHub and you click on export right here, it downloads a zip file that has all of your files, but also it has a package.json, a rollup config.js, and also your bundle.js that was built by VizHub, by rollup. Once you've extracted the zip file, you should just be able to open index.js, and it should just work in your browser. If you want to build these files locally, in a terminal, you can run npm install. This will install rollup locally so that you can run the build. And let's take a quick look at package.json. It just has rollup as a dev dependency, and then you can run npm run build, this script right here, and that will do the same build that happens inside of VizHub, and it will regenerate bundle.js. And let's take a quick look at rollup.config.js. This is a simple rollup configuration that just says, okay, the output format is an immediately invoked function expression that lets you just run the program when the script loads. It includes source maps for good debugging, and it says, okay, if you import something from D3, it'll just use the D3 global, which you load maybe from unpackaged. Then if you wanted to, say, publish this to blocks.org, you can just use gistup, and it will work as a gist on blocks.org. See, here it is, working on blocks.org. And you can take the same code and publish it on any static file server or integrate it into your more complex programs that might even use Webpack or Babel. And the modules exported from VizHub should work just fine in those environments because they are just standard ES6 modules. So that's the visualization export feature. Another new feature is resizable split pane. Whenever I showed VizHub to people, they would try to grab that thing in the middle, and at the time there was nothing to grab. And they would be like, hey, there's nothing to grab onto, man. I can't resize the thing. So since this was a common request, we made it so that you can resize the split pane. If you open this link here, see how the running visualization scales. And by the way, in conjunction with the browser zoom, with control minus, control plus, you can have full control over the size of the code and also the proportion of the screen taken up by the running program. Also, these YouTube embeds were made responsive, so they resized. They didn't before, so there would be a lot of empty white space or the video would get cut off. So now they fill their available space. Some people ask me if they can use the stuff on VizHub, and I said, well, yeah, of course. But then I realized that, the licensing's not clear at all if you just look at VizHub. So I added this to all the pages in VizHub. All the code in VizHub is released under the MIT license. The MIT license is a permissive, not viral, open source license, so you could even copy paste code into proprietary projects and not worry about it. Also, you can fork and modify stress-free. You don't have to worry about, restrictive viral GPL licensing on any of the works in VizHub. Another new feature is customizable height. And this was really essential for this world countries tree. If I were to set the height back to 500, the default, then see this tree is not nearly as readable. So I'll just set the height back to, I think it was like 960. Another huge new feature is better debugging. When I asked the WPI students for feedback in general on the course, I thought they would say things about the content or the teaching style, but no, so many people were like, debugging sucks in VizHub. I don't want to use VizHub because the debugging sucks. Students would say I wasted hours looking for this misplaced comma, or the syntax error didn't tell me what line number it was. So I realized whoa, this is the number one priority for VizHub. If people don't want to use it because of this, it needs to be fixed right now. So now, if you have a syntax error in the middle of your code, VizHub will tell you exactly where it is. Also, if you try to import from a bogus file name, VizHub will tell you, oh, that doesn't exist. If you import a bogus name from a file, that type of error will also surface, non-existent export choropleth map. You can delete visualizations now too. This is sort of the last of the basic features that wasn't implemented yet for a while. And last but not least, VizHub now has a more complete text editor. One of my students said, part of the reason I would like to develop outside of VizHub is to be able to use a more complete text editor. And I thought, oh yeah, that's a totally valid point. And thankfully, we're basing our editor on CodeMirror, which has a lot of plugins and stuff. So why don't I just add some plugins to make it better, make it more complete? So that's exactly what I did. I added the Sublime Text key mapping for CodeMirror, so now that you can use all these keyboard shortcuts that you can use in Sublime Text. For example, Control-J. If I hit Control-J, boom, it joins the lines together. Control-F, search, and Control-H, that's a good one. Search and replace. That's a sweet feature. Also, if you select some lines and hit Control/, it'll comment them all out. And even folding is working. So Control-Shift-Bracket will fold a function, and you can unfold it like that. So all this stuff is now working inside of VizHub, and I think it'll be super useful, commenting, uncommenting, searching for things like, where's that transform? There it is. Hopefully these features make it a more complete and usable code editor. Also now, if you click on a color, you get a color picker, so you can instantly change the color of things without having to use an external color picker. So those are the new features of VizHub 1.0. Why don't you try it out and give me some feedback. Tell me what you think. Now we're into the last couple weeks of the visualization course with WPI, and that has been sort of my funding source for this work. But given how well it's gone, and how exciting it is, it's really exciting for me to see it actually working and coming together, and the students fork each other's works, and it's really exciting, and I just want to continue doing this sort of thing forever. I just want to make more and more videos and more open source visualizations and sort of push the envelope on what's possible with interactive data visualizations. And also this web-based authorship, and I want to make a lot of improvements to VizHub going forward, but at the moment I'm like, oh no, I have to just do this other work instead to make money and pay the bills. Which is fine, it's a good living, but I would really like to devote more time to VizHub, making open source stuff, making videos going forward. So, just as an experiment, I set up a Patreon page. Patreon is this thing that gives you an opportunity to support creators whose work you appreciate. And I'm not really sure if this model can work for me, but I figured I'd give it a shot. So if you appreciate my work and you want to support this work going forward, just give me $1 a month or more, $5, $10. And if you pay $30 a month, you can join an exclusive online learning community hosted by me with no university affiliations, where you can share your work, get feedback, ask me questions directly. That's what you'll get if you join this learning community for $30 a month. So that's VizHub 1.0. Thanks for watching. Take care.